Welcome to the Maximum Mom podcast. I am so excited today to have Iffy Ibekwe join me to discuss all kinds of things about motherhood, being a lawyer, and entrepreneurship, and gardening, of course, because we'll have to throw in a little gardening. Iffy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Elise, I am so excited to be here. This is one of those podcasts I thought, one day I want to pitch this podcast because I just feel like it's so aligned with everything I do. Like the whole title of it is just,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't have
Well,
words.
yeah, and you, like me, are also a mother of four. So tell us about the little people who make you a mom.
Right. And I have to drop my mother of four joke. I don't know if you've
Uh,
experienced this, but when you tell people you have four children, at that point, I would say maybe 85% of them cannot compute what that even means. And you might as well have said that you have 7 children or 12 children because it's just so many children, right? And so I happen to enjoy it. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. No one is around me right now, and they're all in summer camp or preschool. And yeah, I have a very busy home life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I am a biological mom of four and then a stepmom of two more. So when I say, that I'm a mom, stepmom to six, people are just like, what is the matter with you? What were you thinking?
No, or they think, is this something religious or did somebody make you do this? And why would one do that? And just a generation ago, it wasn't so weird, but now it seems
Exactly.
like you have to be a part of some fringe community to have 4 children and work. Don't throw in that you work.
Oh my gosh. Well, and if you tell people you own a law firm,
Oh, you're
they're like,
nuts.
what are you doing? Well, the best is my husband, who, came into our marriage with the two children. And as he tells people I'm marrying somebody with four children, I mean, people were just like, Doug, what are you thinking? like,
Run.
like, back up, rethink that. Oh my gosh. But we're about to bring kiddo number 6 to college this week. So it's pretty exciting. He feels like, we've accomplished a lot to
That
get.
is quite the accomplishment to get 6 out college ready. I mean, that is the
Absolutely.
dream, I think, for most moms.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, it feels like a total win. Um,
absolutely.
well, I'm so excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about your husband, where you live, what you're doing now.
Yes. So I have been married for 10 years to my awesome husband. He's an academic coach. So he does
Um,
SAT, ACT tutoring, and he also tutors people from kindergarten to graduate school. How he remembers any of this is beyond me, but he is one of those people that if he sits down and takes a standardized test, he can ace it. He was a National Merit Scholar, and that's just his passion and love. And we are both entrepreneurs. We live in Bentonville, Arkansas, though my practice is based in Texas. Austin specifically is where my office is located. And we came out here in the middle of the pandemic about a year ago and thought, you know what? This is absolutely beautiful. We knew nothing about this Northwest Arkansas. Don't move here if you're listening. And it's just a little gem of a place. And we just decided to grow our family, not by adding more children, but just have them grow here.
that is so awesome. I bet your husband is going to be like game changing in the homework help department. I mean,
Oh,
I want to like, oh,
I don't do any school related. You know how they're like, who's the contact? I'm like, well, here's the form. Let me know if they need me for moms and donuts or whatever. It's the absolute opposite
I love
stereotype.
that.
I have no idea what's going on. Is there messy day today? Is it water day? Like that's I
That's
have
awesome. I love that though. But he is going to be, I mean, that math homework. I
oh,
mean, anyone who can ace standardized tests, they've got all the math down pat. So that's going to be
absolutely.
hugely
Yes.
helpful. Well, I wanted to talk to you today. I mean, when I think of you and what you're doing, what you've accomplished, and what you've come from, I mean, I think of three real like topics. I think of self-care and, kind of how you went from where you were to where you are now. I also think about the idea of setting goals and how to really set
Mhm.
smart goals, and what does that constant push for growth look like. And then I also think about surrounding yourself by like-minded professionals, and kind of like that quote we hear, your network is really your net worth, and I think of all the people you have surrounded yourself with and just what you've accomplished. So I'm probably going to go in opposite order. I mean, let's talk a little bit about, well, let's talk about goals, and let's talk about where you were and where you are now.
I don't know how you know this about me. I don't know if I filled out a form or my intern filled out a form, but I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I should be taking notes. She has me down pat." Um, Goals are my jam.
Yeah.
Honestly, I am the ultimate goal setter because I love to set a goal, even though it seems absolutely ridiculous, unachievable, pie in the sky. I'm going to write it down and then make it actionable.
Yep.
So, whether for one of my goals this year was to have my book traditionally published. So I needed to have it, first of all, write a proposal, find a literary agent. These are all steps. And I see when I'm ahead of the schedule. And when I wrote it, I kid you not, it was nonsense. It was like writing down nonsense because I thought, who am I to write a book on this? And who am I to have the audacity to say, I want one of these top 5 publishing houses to buy it?
Right.
And by December, I'm just like, what? And so I'm one of those people that when I write it down, all of it starts to work even behind the scenes. And that's the same thing that I do in my personal life as well, whether it's I'm running a half marathon by October, right? And so I don't know how that's going to happen because I only run twice a week. I'm not a fast runner. And I'm also carrying much more pounds than when I was more of a runner, stereotypical. Anyone can run, truly. But I write it down and then make it actionable. And so that's one of the ways that I've truly lived my life, whether it's a revenue goal for my business, even though it seems ridiculous, like, how will I find the next customer? This is insane. Or if it's just a goal for how many books I want to read, which, of course, I have a book reading goal as well.
Of course.
Everything is set so that I can track. And I always like to be a little bit ahead. And it's not so obsessive, it is a little bit, but it also lets me know, look how much you are accomplishing. Because I'm one of those people who if I didn't write it down, it's as if I have done nothing. And I
Yep.
think that's why I do so many things. And people are like, how are you doing all of this? And I sit at the end of each month and I goal set. And then
Right.
I do a retrospective at the end of the quarter. And it's just a whole system that's built out in my, I use the Inkwell Planner system. I have many,
Oh,
but
yeah.
right now I use the Inkwell Planner goal system. And I just love it. It's just awesome.
Well, because it seems to me that being able to set those goals and really then doing that look back and seeing the progress, that has to help spur you on every single month and quarter when you're seeing the progress.
Yes, one would think that, but my mind is also very fickle. I'm like, "Oh God, why have you forsaken me?" It when we had Snowmageddon in February and I was looking at my revenue numbers and payroll was still gonna happen. No, I was not thinking, "Look how much you've accomplished." I was thinking, "I can't do this. This is not working. It has never worked." It's like, forget the data. It burn it all down, freeze it all down, right?
Right.
So I wish I could say yes, and that's how I keep going. But no, it's more granular than that. I wish I could hold on to last month or last week, but I literally have to look and say, oh my gosh, okay, yes, it's okay. It's not over.
Isn't that so true though? I mean, it's fascinating to hear you. I mean, I just know even in my own family, like when I, have been a parent and parenting all these children, to college. And I think every so often you're so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh, are they ever going to learn to do the things that they need to learn? Or am I ever going to not worry about them dying,
Oh
as they go
gosh.
off, doing something? And then every so often I have to step back and I'm like, Elise, they're all fine. Like they did good. Oh yeah.
You did good, yes.
And it's hard though to take a step back and be like, yeah, we did this. This is good.
I have
Because
been I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're good. We are constantly looking for the next thing, and not really ever reveling in the success of today.
Yes. And the first thing that came to mind when you brought up with kids was I have been changing diapers
Yeah.
since 2013,
Yep.
almost every day.
Yeah.
I mean, thousands of them. And at one point, I remember having three kids in diapers or training pants and thinking, I guess this is never going to end. I guess it's just never going to end. Like they will not master this toilet, you know? And when you said that, I know you're sending your sixth to college, but I only have one in diapers and I have forgotten to remember how far I've come. Three of
Exactly.
them are no longer, and a 15-month-old, yes, I'm sure there's some listening who are like, I can fix that. I don't really care. But I have one in diapers
Completely.
and
No, I
three
mean, it's
are in the potty. I'm
true.
winning.
You have won. You are like better than 50% and the
Oh,
pot is being used. I mean, I felt the same way, nursing and pregnant for 9 years straight.
oh
I mean, and
heavens.
by the time, that was over, I was like, can I have my body back, please?
Right.
You're just so, I mean, that's a long time. 9 years is
It
a long
is.
time. And
Yes.
we forget. I mean, that's big. And that sounds so simple, but that's big stuff. Like
Right.
birthing and feeding children is important work.
Keeping
And
them alive is
I mean,
hard. Yes.
keeping them alive, I feel like has been the story of my life because you move from that and then you've got teenagers and they're pulling
Right.
all kinds of pranks. And
Oh, I'm not even ready.
you're like, oh yeah, don't, you're not ready. Just
let,
enjoy
let
the
them
little bitty ones
get through
and
the cuddly phase.
keep changing diapers with a
Yes.
smile on.
There's more coming that
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
appear in the diaper. So,
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your network. I mean, I loved this weekend, actually, of all weekends, to be able to see you post in a common group where we belong to, Rachel
mhm.
Rogers, we should all be millionaires, and see you post about what's going on. And I mean, if that wasn't to me just this perfect segue into your network and what your network has meant to you and how do you foster your network?
Oh, that's such a strong question. I think one of the ways that I found my people is outside of lawyers
Right.
and outside of the legal norms, whether that's with how I think about my business, the client experience, all of that. I tend not to gravitate toward lawyer stuff or programs that are
Imagine.
marketed for lawyers or even conferences for lawyers. I don't mind participating, but that's not where I've really found the gold.
Right.
I, as a Black woman, I often feel very marginalized as a lawyer. People are still shocked that I'm a lawyer, and I've been practicing for 14 years now, which I don't even think, I'm not a baby lawyer. And
No.
so finding a group like that of like-minded entrepreneurs and really finding just one or two to be in community with has been mind-blowing. I've had to let go of some of the um s- closeness of some of my friendships over my business. Excuse me, because sometimes people don't have the ability to see what you're working and building, and so it's so important to find like your five or your people who get you and understand and can follow in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you bring up such a good point of sometimes people's success can be really almost disheartening to others who either can't see it and can't see the positive in it, or are kind of feel like the light gets shown on them somehow, that because they're not growing and doing that, somehow what you're doing is negative. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for them because everyone has
Oh,
their own journey and
absolutely.
what they're going through. But I did notice that, and here's my first plant analogy. When you start something, it's like germinating a
Right.
seed, right? So my mistake at the beginning was letting everybody know, oh my gosh, my seed is germinating. Tell everybody. And that was, I'm starting a law firm. I'm going to start hang my own shingle, as we say in the law, and start bringing in business. And what I got instead from friends and colleagues were job applications. I saw this person was hiring, and that was so demoralizing and
Totally.
insulting to me, because while they were trying to be protective, it was saying, I don't believe in your little germinating plant, and I'm going to step all over it and trample it.
Right, exactly.
And I just thought, wow, they must really not think that I'm a serious person and that this is something I can do. When in my gut, I knew I could do it. I didn't know how or how I would ever make money or pay myself. I just thought, oh, if somebody hires me, I've already won. Like at the beginning, that was enough. And so that's caused me to kind of protect the next plants, you know. I
Yep, you
just let
do.
them kind of grow in the greenhouse, and the seedlings a little bit stronger, and then it can get a little wind acclimated, and then put it into the raised bed, and all the gardening analogies, right? Because it's not for everyone to come along. And I've even had family, close family, not be supportive or really encourage, but really question and naysay or doubt. And that doesn't feed you, especially at the beginning as an entrepreneur.
Oh,
And so I've just become very protective about my
yeah.
decision making, and I don't share it. I share in the group, but strategically, because that's a space where it's safe. So it's so important to find safe spaces. And even if you notice in this post that we're talking about, I qualified it because there are people who are behind who read things like that and are like, I will never get to where you are. And
Right.
my goal is never to diminish somebody else's flame, but to say, I was there. I still struggle with the same struggles of you being there, even though I'm here, and let you know that it's independent of
Completely.
the money in your bank account or the clients on your roster. So,
Oh, I mean, I think we all struggle. You know what I mean? With,
mhm.
and I mean, sometimes they're different struggles at different levels, and Rachel has such a great model around the different levels, I think, understanding all the different struggles. But I think anybody who thinks somehow, once you get to a certain money in your bank, that doesn't mean you struggle. I've never met that person.
Yes, that is
Like,
absolutely not true. And
yeah,
I think the great thing about that, Elise, is that it forces you to really question why you're doing what you're doing.
absolutely.
Because if you walk that scenario down the road, you do the things to build your business, and then you make this amount that one day you're like, I remember when I got my revenue number that I just never thought. And now if I get that number, it means okay, we can make payroll and, invest in a couple of
Exactly.
things, but nothing to write home about. You start seeing how much it costs to run a business. You're like, I'm like, oh, I need to actually make money. It makes you change the way you think about money. And
Completely.
so you have to find ways to justify working like that, to create and to build this, empire or mini empire, whatever you want to call it, and see when you get there, will it satisfy? Because if it
Absolutely.
doesn't, then it's gonna be hard to get up and do that, even if the
Well, then
money's
you're
rolling in.
stuck. Yeah. I mean, you're
Yes.
stuck in a job that now
That you don't
you
like.
also are responsible for all kinds of other people's jobs,
Yes,
which
that's
to
tough.
me, it's powerful. I mean, you have to have that why out in front all the time of why you're doing it, because there's going to be as many icky days as good days,
Yeah.
and just problems that you deal with, I think. I mean, I think of running a business much like parenting. I mean, and there are many days where, you're looking at that child or teen or whatever, and you're like, what was I thinking?
Whose
Like,
is this? Is this
right.
switched at
I mean,
birth? Yeah.
and who is this person talking to me like this, or,
Yes.
expressing less than gratitude for whatever is in front of them? And you're just like, "Arr." But,
Yes.
and I mean, the same is true in our business too, and I think that it's so important to have your why grounded. And I love that you talk about boundaries around naysayers, and especially at the beginning. But I think really in all of your journey, I mean, because I don't know about you, but I have enough mean girl in my own head. I don't need other naysayers
Yes.
around. I mean, I've got the mean girl loud in my head. And so I have to spend a
Same.
lot of time quieting her
Yes.
and not having others in that same kind of negative mindset.
It's so funny you say that. You're like, I have enough negativity for all of us, okay? In my head that I'm trying to process. Sometimes so much so, and I don't know if this makes me sound super selfish, that I don't have the bandwidth to take on your disapproval of me and my practices. Do you know what I mean? It's enough
Exactly.
that, and so it's very interesting. I do, for anyone listening who is wondering why other people don't come along, people do come along
Oh, yeah.
when they see that you are successful or perceived to be successful, even though you've always been a success, right? They do turn around and come back and say, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me that you got this?" And I've just hung on to my husband as my number one cheerleader for
Oh,
so
yeah,
long
me too.
that he'll say, "Hey, did you tell this person that you got a literary agent?" And I'm so in protective mode that I'm like, "Well, I shared it with the group that I share those things with, but I'm not making some sort of announcement to people
Right,
who aren't either on social media or you know what I mean? Because they're family and I know they're not reading that stuff. And I'm like, no,
right.
it didn't even cross my mind because that approval is no longer necessary. Love them. They don't always understand you or they may not get you, but you don't have to share everything. And I'm okay with
Yeah.
that.
And I mean, the joy in not needing approval from other people, to me, that's game changing.
Yes, it
Game
is.
changing.
It
Tell
is.
us a little bit about your book, if you will. I mean, about
Right.
what you're writing about, what your passion is in this regard.
Yes. So I am an estate planning attorney. I'm the type of attorney that does wills and trusts and other estate planning type documents. And I realized in my practice that a lot of the clients that came to me, it's almost like when they sat down, they felt a sigh of relief. Like, oh, finally, you are relatable. I can tell you about my wacky family, or I'm having IVF by myself because I'm in my early 40s and I just want to have a kid and want to make
Yeah.
sure I'm protected. And you can do that. And I found that I was a haven for all of the. There's a book and it's something and broken things. It's like all the wounded birds can come to me. Not that my clients are wounded birds, but I'm a place that welcomes come
Right.
as you are, right? Whether it's your race or your gender or sexual orientation or national origin, I can work with you.
Right.
And so much of estate planning is that old white guy in a white
Yep.
shoe law firm passing it on to his nephew or son, and then that cycle continues, which is why 70% of Americans don't even have a will because we aren't even advertising. When's the last time you saw an estate planner on a billboard saying estate planning is for everyone?
Right.
Never,
Yeah.
right?
Never.
I've never seen it. And so I'm writing a book that's essentially showing people what they need and how to find a lawyer who's aligned to meet that need. And so I want them to feel like an informed
Right.
consumer in estate planning. So it takes the pressure off because I feel like there's sometimes eyes like, who are you to write an estate planning book? Well, it's not. I'm not writing an estate planning book. I by no means hold myself out to be an expert in estate planning, but I do know enough to be dangerous.
Right.
And I want to encourage people to go find competent legal counsel who will respect
Absolutely.
them, their cultural experiences and background and life experience, and not just look at them as a balance sheet and say, oh well, you don't really have a taxable estate in Texas, so here's what you get, right? But somebody who
Exactly.
they can understand what they should ask, and it's a guide for doing so.
Well, and do you think at all about the whole idea, and I'm sure you do, about passing on wealth just as part of generational, increase and how the world can really change if that can change and if people
Yes,
can. And I think of the different communities that you mentioned, and I mean, I would think that this is a huge area that's lacking, just
absolutely.
education around, legacy building and wealth building and, intergenerational wealth.
Yes, there was a Prosperity Now a study that came out, I believe in 2017, that says by 2053, Black people are on track to have zero wealth. And by
Mm,
2073, Latinx community is on track to be worth $0. Right now, I think the average, this is a couple of years old, Black family is worth about $17,000 and the average white family is worth about 170,000. So 10 times the amount right now. And this is pre-COVID. So I know that that has definitely
Oh,
gotten
yeah.
worse. And so when you talk about the intergenerational wealth transfer, if you do something like balance sheet estate planning, where you're just like, you don't really have assets, you just need a
Right.
simple will. That's why we use words like simple will. But whose life is simple when you have a legacy asset like land in East
Right.
Texas, or your grandmother's house in East Austin, right? Which was, yeah, where she was redlined to in the past, but now it's absolutely prime development
Totally.
property. You can look at that and say, well, yeah, it might be worth 750,000, but again, it's not. You can just pass that on, what, to 4 heirs who live in 4 parts of the country? Who's paying
Right.
the property tax? How does that work, right? How do you keep that? Because you know in 10 years it's going to be worth $1.5 million or more, the way things are going. And so that is such an important part of the book, is really talking about that generational wealth transfer, and how people who own are continuously building wealth, whether
Right.
it's real estate, land wealth, stocks, anything, right? Ownership matters. But I think in this season where people are really hip to the, yeah, I'm building my portfolio, real estate, and I'm building it with brokerage accounts, and I'm building it with life insurance, they miss so many of the key things in transferring that correctly.
Absolutely.
And estate planning is that transfer process, working with these other tools and assets to make sure they go where they need to go and avoid taxes and probate and all these hurdles that can steal your money, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and I think there's such a lack of familiarity with, most of us, I mean, me
Oh,
included, around a lot of the details and the ins and outs of this. And to have you, somebody who both understands it, but then also understands the client journey in a way
yes.
that is going to be very different from that, Bob Smith and some,
Yeah.
floor 52 tower law firm and his, 3 generation pedigree coming out of Harvard. You know what I mean? It's just a
Yeah, it
different,
actually makes me cringe because that seems so, like, on the nose,
but
like,
well,
that
it
is
is.
there is a Bob Smith listening and saying, "How dare you? I went to
I know.
Harvard."
It's really
Oh
interesting.
my
I had
gosh.
such an interesting talk with one of my children yesterday, and he's like 24-ish. I mean, it's kind of bad. I don't know exactly how old he is, but I'd have to count down. But so he's in that range. And he was mentioning a friend who has spent his whole life doing work in labor work. Like he's
Mhm.
really involved in building sails. He loves competing on sailboats and doing all this stuff
Oh.
regarding sailing. And he has just loved that work. And interestingly, though, he's from the East Coast. He has this, typical East Coast family with their, multi-generational thing. And all of a sudden, now this kid has a job at some wealth advisor. And my son was like, what is that? Like, how do you go from, building sales and doing all this? He's like, he's got no experience in that. And it was fascinating. And I thought, well, that's simply just a familial thing.
Absolutely, that's how it works generationally.
And yeah, and I mean, but how interesting to, I mean, because that child probably has heard all kinds of things about passing on wealth and intergenerational this, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and the difference is so profound. And I think until we have people like you, I mean, a million of you, like
I
shouting
know.
from the rooftops, dropping your books that are published by, the top 5 publishing house people, and just get the word out there. It's like the world needs the change so much.
Yes.
And I applaud you so much for doing this work and for writing the book and having such a big, hairy, audacious goal and just being like, I'm writing this shit down and I'm going to make it happen.
It's crazy because it's not for me. I can't do all these estate plans. I really want other lawyers. When you
Right,
think of the statistics, 5% of lawyers are Black in the
right.
whole country. When it comes to estate planning, I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
That that's, I don't know what minuscule percent that is. Not a lot. I haven't even identified 100 Black estate planners in the whole United States, which would be like 2 per state. If
Yeah.
that, okay, that's insane. That's an insanely low amount. So my goal isn't even that You have to, if you're Black, you should go to a Black lawyer. If you're Latino, you should go to a Latino lawyer. Or if you're, we all have to get the people who get it and are on board to start sending the message that this is a safe place for you and
Yep.
yours and your issues to come here, and I will serve you and help you in protecting your wealth generationally.
And it's not only a safe place, it's a welcoming place that
Right.
you deserve to be at the table having these conversations. Because
Yes.
I feel like people have just been so marginalized where they don't even feel like picking up the phone and showing up at a lawyer's office is something that they're welcome to do, and
Yes. Can I say an interesting story about that? So my name is Ifama Ibekwe. I'm an immigrant to this country, a naturalized citizen. So I understand people not wanting to speak to you because they don't want to get your name wrong, or it just seems so foreign, right? Even though this is a country full of foreign people, right?
yep.
Same thing has happened for clientele where they say, no one called me back. I think it's my name. And instead of being like, no, they're just disorganized and da 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 da, because I'm thinking they're not looking for free legal work. They're calling to give you business, and you
Right,
didn't respond back to them because maybe their name was Mohammed, or, a name that is foreign, whether or not you're born here. And how
right,
much of a barrier that is when I'm talking about lawyers and doctors and, you know,
truly,
not, and this is a thing I really dispel this myth that if you are talking about serving communities that are marginalized, you're talking about pro bono or low bono. That is so insulting on so many levels to assume that we're talking about giving away something for
totally.
free,
Yep.
because that happens to me all the time whenever we have 4 kids and we might go look at a private preschool, and it's kind of like, oh well, we don't have scholarships here. It's like, don't worry, we will not be enrolling our kids here because you make comments like that, because I already see where you're thinking, you know nothing about us, but the idea is that it's a charitable thing to do. And I really want people listening to challenge that
Yeah.
whenever you think about, okay, this person is not white, so they must be poor. They're not white, so they must need help or a handout. No, my clients are full pay.
Right.
I always tell people when they ask me how much does it cost, I am not the discount estate planner. I can
Right.
find you one who can, many women are undercharging. I mean, across
Oh,
all of
yeah.
the lawyer Facebook groups, it's like a race to the bottom for our rates, right?
Yep.
I am not the one to do that. I got 4 kids again who I
Right.
want to send to a particular private school in Bentonville. And so I have to understand that with my years of experience and just building a business, that there is a value there that is not just an exchange of paper and filling out forms. And so it's so much of it goes into understanding why we are here and what people can do in order to empower themselves, not only as clients, but as lawyers, so that they can better serve the populace.
Well, and I mean, serving the populace, that is the key. I think you just hit the nail on the head, like, so hard. And I feel like so many of us, our quote unquote populace is so limited. I mean, because we just haven't had the exposure, we haven't had
Mhm.
the experience, we've come into things closed-minded with a lack of curiosity and with a lack of willingness to be vulnerable and ask.
Yes.
I mean, you made such a good point, I think, about the pronunciation of names. And I mean, it sounds silly. I mean, I have a name with way too many vowels.
I
People
have one too.
always are concerned about pronouncing my name and they wonder, well, how do you do it? And people, they're hesitant to ask. And I think because of that, just little situation I have, I always just ask people. And I just have
Yes.
to say, like, how do I properly pronounce your name? I never want to butcher somebody's name. And, I just ask. And I mean,
Yes.
if somebody is offended to answer, I just don't find that. I have found people have been 100% willing to answer. And, but then it's up to me to remember and,
And
not
to
mess
keep it.
it up again
Well,
or
I say you can mess it up a couple more times. I mean, personally, as someone who has a name that is very common in Nigeria, like
right.
almost like uh, a Karen Jones or something, right? It's not unique. But here it's like, oh, that's so exotic. It's like, yeah, no, it's really not. But I don't mind people asking me numerous times to how to pronounce my name because I know they want to get it right.
Right.
Also, I am notoriously horrible with names. So just because you have a name that is not the norm doesn't mean that you're a good name person. I want to be able to ask you, okay, please tell me how to pronounce your last name again. I don't want to even attempt to butcher it, right? Because
Right.
that's just human.
It
It's
is.
just human. So,
And I think the more humanness we can all bring to our world, and especially our legal world, and when you think of something like estate planning, which I think is such an almost elite,
oh, it
I,
is. It
you know,
is.
it's, you think of it that way at least. And it, we have to be able to bring more humanness, and our populace has to be a more expansive view.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm so excited for your book. When is your book going to come out?
Well, it's at publishers right now. I have my literary agent who is shopping it around to various publishing houses that are on your bookshelf. I'm like, what? Who? They want to see me? So the goal is to have it out by 2022. I haven't gotten
Oh,
a book deal yet, but
right.
it's very close to book deal time. And so just early in the 2022s, it should be out. And I really want it to be something that you can use, that you can give to friends and family and say,
Totally.
here, start here.
Yep.
And my goal isn't that you should do it yourself. Okay. I'm not one of those lawyers who says that you should legal Zoom your
Right.
will. It's just too important. But I want you to find someone who can do it for you and know
Right.
what to ask them. That's it. It's just a guide so you know enough to be dangerous, but
Right.
not enough to go to law school and do it yourself and be reviewing, 40 pages of
Absolutely.
clauses. That's not what you want to do. You want just, I wouldn't do my own brain surgery. I could
Right.
read and watch as many YouTube videos and be informed and intrigued and just mesmerized, but I'm not going to do it. I don't care. I can deep
Exactly.
dive, but I'm not going to do it. But I know what to say. Okay, when you're cutting this artery, or whatever, I'm that person. I can deep dive for so many ridiculous things that I will never, ever do. But I do know when the rubber hits the road, I will hire someone to do that as much as I can afford
Absolutely.
to, or save to, or find a way to get it done for free or for a low cost.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I'm a firm believer and we shouldn't do stuff we suck at. I mean, like we need to stay in our lanes and
Yes.
I mean, I like you become an expert on the side and then drive the people around me crazy because I'm like, well, what about this? And I read this, and what do
Yes,
you think
deep
about
dives,
this?
rabbit
They're like,
holes.
oh
Yes,
gosh, Elise, don't please.
absolutely. That's what I do on gardening videos. Like I'm looking at squash vine borers and how to treat them, and
Oh
I don't even
wow.
have them. And I'm like,
Right.
but I could use neem oil at this stage, and then I can use BT at this. I mean,
Well,
insane,
tell me
insane.
about your garden. What do you grow mostly? Are you a food gardener? Are you a flower gardener? Both? Tell us.
Oh my gosh, I am a little bit of everything. I on the Enneagram, which I hate to drop because
Right.
I'm a 7, which means that I like a little bit of everything. So you're gonna find gardeners who are vegetables and like specifically tomatoes. I mean, you
Right.
get that granular, or strawberry people. I am more of a flower, vegetable, and fruit person, which
Okay.
is everything.
Right.
I do not do succulents. I don't enjoy
Okay.
succulents. They're
Right.
not easy. They don't take to like the environment of my home.
Right.
So I have right now in my beds, I've been harvesting my potatoes that I planted about 2 months ago. I have some
Oh, yeah.
kale, some Swiss chard, strawberries, peppers, tomatoes. I harvested my broccoli already, and carrots are almost ready. Sweet potatoes. I'm visually going through it. Peas, beets, um, and bell peppers, fig. I have a
Wow.
fig tree that's fruiting finally, blackberries, blueberries. Um, those are all of my plants that I eat.
You have been so busy since you moved to
It's
Arkansas.
insane. This climate is phenomenal. I moved from Austin to a place where you can grow these things without a
Amazing.
greenhouse. It's amazing.
It
And then I
is.
have a bunch of just flowers and natives here. I'm actually taking the Master Gardener certification with the University of Arkansas Extension
No. I
this
love that
fall.
in your spare time.
My husband was like, "Why?" I said,
Oh,
"Because these are my people."
absolutely.
Who
Those are your
doesn't want to deep dive into 40 hours of instruction and then a test?
totally. Yeah, I'm with you.
Me.
I mean, that is awesome. Have you
Yes.
and your husband ever read Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play, or the card game she has that goes with it?
I read part of Fair Play, but there's another one that I really like. It's by Tiffany Dufu. It's called Drop the Ball. Have you heard of
Oh,
that?
yes, absolutely.
And we
Yeah.
are that couple.
That,
And I'm at my friend's Airbnb right now because she runs Airbnbs all through town because my house is being cleaned, because that's just one of the things that we
right.
weren't necessarily doing that every 2 weeks. And now we're, it's like, we'll find the money. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever it is. But I think Fair Play is similar to that, right? In
It
the
is.
role. Yeah.
It is. Well, in Fair Play, the thing it made me think of, is when you're working with somebody like your husband and raising these 4 children, having ownership over the skills and the tasks. And we were talking about your husband and all the stuff he does around the schools and the homework and just keeping up with all that. And families like you and I's, big families, I mean,
Mhm.
it's impossible to do it
Yes.
otherwise, without that division of not only of labor, but of ownership of the tasks and the projects. And it just, when I think of you doing your, certification in gardening, it's like that works when you do have a partner who
Oh,
has ownership of certain things, that you're able to turn away from and say, I am going to go spend 40 hours doing this certification and I'm going to love it. And it's going to be
yes.
great for our family because
Yes.
you get to be your unicorn self doing something that is unique, passion filled, and it brings you joy. And then you bring all that back to your family, which is
Yes.
all positive.
And I love that you say that, because the number one question I get is, how are you doing all of this? It seems like you're not frazzled and just depressed and just, in some hovel somewhere. And it's because of my husband. He is a completely full formed partner in this marriage. I haven't had I don't feel like I have to raise him. I don't feel like he babysits when he's with the kids. I've never felt like that.
Yeah.
In fact, I fully trust his ability to problem solve as someone who has, reasoning skills and good sense. And I think a lot of the times there's a level of control that I see where the domain of the home is the woman's. I am not a great home
Right.
housekeeper. I'm not. I
Right.
don't do laundry. I can cook. I don't enjoy cleaning, but now I'm training my kids to do all these things too.
Totally.
And so
Absolutely.
I think when you have that kind of relationship and you're not saddled with the responsibility of, not only I have an office with people who have their people to be responsible for, but I'm also supposed to be in charge of all these children and know what they're supposed to be doing at every point in the day and making sure that they're fed. No, it's not reasonable. And so I'm glad you brought it up. I always tell him when I talk about him on the podcast, but um, yes, he is absolutely my partner in life and in building business. And
Yep.
I support him and he supports me, and I do what I'm strong at and he does what he's strong at. So
I think that's just, I mean, it's beautiful because it's the key, I think, to all this and to be able to do it with, I mean, I hate to say ease because obviously it's not easy, but I
mhm.
mean, there's a certain peace. I mean, I mean, my husband is so similar. I mean, he is just such a full formed person doing all his things. I mean, he does so much more than me in so many arenas. And
Same.
it's his skill set and it's what he does. And I mean, my poor children, they joke all the time. They're like, can you even open your own door anymore? I'm like,
Oh,
no, I can't. Like,
that's so
he's
sweet.
that kind of husband who just, I mean, it's amazing. And I feel for women who just have that, like you talk about that feeling of control where it's almost like they have to raise their husband as well.
Yes.
And it, and I really encourage people to delegate,
As
delegate.
much as you can afford, delegate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And let
Wow.
them fly, if you have a partner who is like that, I mean, I don't think it's uncommon, but
No.
give them rope because they don't want to be treated like a child, and see what they can do, you
And
know?
it's amazing to watch. I think so many people, I mean, as a family law attorney and somebody who works with families, day in and day out, I have watched so many men just absolutely excel in their role when given the space to do so. And no,
Yes.
it's not going to look exactly like mom, but it doesn't need to. I
No, it
mean,
doesn't.
the
Mhm.
children benefit from the differences, I think. And
Yes.
and I think it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a lovely thing to watch. And so I'm so glad we touched on that, because I do think people like us with these big families, I think we have to remember to really shout out to our partners who are
Yes.
such strong, I mean, hugely supportive. And I mean, they're just doers.
Yes, they are.
Well, they are, I mean, I don't ever think of me like saying, oh, this is what you need to do. It's more like we come together with a, oh, here's our pile of shit. How are we sorting it? You know,
Exactly.
who's doing what and
Who's
guys.
shoveling what, you know?
Exactly.
Shovel and get your share going, you know? It's true. Otherwise, it makes it seem like, oh, yes, I just wake up and everybody is where they need to be and life is great. No, it's
No.
absolutely not that. And that's the hidden gem in all of this is,
Yeah.
okay, as a person with a big family, as you say, um, and a business and a full life who seems to be happy and have
Right.
joy radiating, right? How's it working? Most of it is because of my partner
Yep.
being a partner,
I
right?
agree.
My husband is my partner, literally not my law partner, but my life partner. So
Totally.
having that support and really nurturing, our gifts and being okay. I'm not the type that says you got to go outside and mow the lawn and I need you to be like, no, we're gonna hire. Look,
Exactly.
I like the garden and outside is my domain. If we're having garden of the month, it's because of me, not depending on you, like the lawnmower. Never going to be as good as I can get it done professionally, first of all, right? And I'm not going to do it, but just
No
little things
way.
like those roles, let them
Yes.
go and say, oh, if they like to cook, cook.
Yes.
If you like
I mean,
laundry and ironing, absolutely go for it.
oh, and kids, let me just tell you, kids are amazing at laundry. I
Yes,
mean,
they
we
are.
we were hardcore family. Not, I did not do laundry after they turned 8. I mean, I am like
I'm not
hands
there
off
yet. I am so
laundry mom.
close.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
My kids can sweep. I didn't
yes,
know that.
they, they can do it all.
Yes, they can
They
do a
can
lot.
do it all. Absolutely. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed talking to you today. I so appreciate your time and your energy, and I cannot wait to see your book hit the world and the change
Oh,
it'll make.
thank you so much for having me. This was such a great conversation. I feel like we should just talk weekly.
I know, I know. We could just exchange the child stories, you know?
I know. I have so many questions for you, like business, like, I'm like, I need to know everything. Okay. Tell me everything. So,
Yes, indeed. Yeah, well, we'll just have to get on. We'll do that. We'll get in our Schmilly group and create a little
yes,
pod for us.
absolutely.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day. And I appreciate it. And thank you so much for handling my technological problem at the beginning. I really appreciate your patience.
No worries. And thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to be on and
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. And I mean, there's so many moms out there that I think will just really resonate with the spirit. Oh, we didn't even talk about self-care, but I think we did a little bit with our gardening. But I mean, I think we'll have to have you on again. We could have a whole session on self-care.
we should. And I think
Uh,
that, I wish like we could all work like you're working right now with that view. And this
yeah,
is self-care while you're working.
it
Just
is.
living where you're living and seeing what you're seeing today has to be great for the soul. So
Oh, I said something to somebody. I was like, I wish we had moved on the water a decade ago. I mean, my blood pressure is simply lower now. I mean, it
really,
is.
see, these are
Oh,
the tips you need to give me because I'm like, I could be in the city for 20 more years rather than moving out in 10. Let me know.
okay. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day and thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.